Hi, I'm Cheryl Leach. In this problem, we're going to be looking at the relationship between the graphs of a function f and the graph of its derivative f prime. Well, I'd like to sketch the graph of f prime, but to help me do that, I'm going to look at a few questions about my function f. So let's take a look. At first, it's telling me that the derivative is positive on some interval. Well, what happens when a derivative is positive? We know that that means that my function is increasing. Well, let's take a look at our function. When is it increasing? It's increasing from negative infinity until I hit x equals 0. So my derivative is positive on the interval from negative infinity to 0. And this tells me that my function is increasing on the interval from negative infinity to 0. Let's look at the next part. My first derivative is now negative. We know that means it's decreasing. So again, let's take a look at our function. When is it decreasing? It's decreasing from the time that x equals 0 forevermore. So it's negative on the interval from 0 to infinity. And this tells me that my graph is decreasing on the interval from 0 to infinity. Now what about f prime increasing? Well, remember that f prime is giving me the slope of a tangent line. So the slope of the tangent line is increasing. That means the second derivative is positive, or in other words, it's concave up. And if you take a look at our graph, it's never concave up. So this never happens. So f is not ever concave up. Well, how about the derivative decreasing? Again, when is the slope of the tangent line decreasing? In other words, when is the second derivative negative? Well, look, that happens when it's concave down. And that happens all the time in this graph. So my graph is always concave down. So concave down on the interval negative infinity to positive infinity. Now I've collected quite a bit of information about the graph of my function, and it matches up exactly to the picture. But what I really want to do here is get the graph of f prime. So what do I know about the graph of f prime? Well, it's positive from negative infinity to 0. Positive means it's going to be all above the x-axis. All the y-coordinates will be positive. Once I hit 0, the graph will then become negative. In other words, all the y-coordinates will be below the x-axis. I know it's never going to be increasing, and it's always going to be decreasing. And so I'm going to end up with a graph that looks something like this. Positive until I hit 0, and then negative. And always decreasing. So this would be a good example of the graph of f prime. I hope this is helpful. Thanks.